Wonderful. Thanks so much, Sam. And hello, and a very warm welcome to everyone that's joined us today. As always, we're very, very excited to be here with you and to have you join us for these free lifestyle medicine webinars. They're designed to help support you on your weight loss journey so that you can achieve that long-term sustained weight loss that we're all chasing after. So each webinar that we do covers a very important but sometimes overlooked aspect that's essential to work on as part of the longer term weight loss journey. So some of you will have been here before, and for those that have, a very warm welcome back. And if you're new to us, then we really hope that you find the information that we share useful. These sessions are designed to be interactive, so if you've got any questions as you go along, please do ask. And just to introduce myself, I am Dr. Sarah Baker. I'm a GP for Boots Online Doctor. I've got a background in physiotherapy and a specialist interest in lifestyle medicine. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be joining you. And I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Samantha, who's going to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's webinar. It's great to be back. My name is Dr. Samantha Wellapilly. I am a GP also here at Boots Online Doctor, part of the lifestyle medicine team. I'm also a nutritional therapist, and a yoga therapist, and a coach, and I'm very passionate about lifestyle medicine and especially how we really take that holistic approach and really look at the long-term outcomes of a weight loss journey.
Wonderful.
So I think we talked, so for those of you that came last week, we talked about cravings and we talked about the yo-yo dieting cycle. So let us know in the chat box. I know lots of you are here today, this lunchtime, so well done for coming on such a warm day. If it is warm where you are, it's boiling where I am. But do let us know how you've got on with the advice we shared last week, and if you've made any changes in the week gone by to your daily routine and how that's impacted you and impacted your confidence on your weight loss journey. And just to let you know, we're going to talk all about the secrets of the microbiome and how, as Sarah said, this is a bit of an overlooked topic when it comes to talking about weight loss. This is your weekly contact point. We're going to run through a few slides, give you some information to start with, and then go into the question and answer session, just to remind you that obviously this is a public forum and we can't really go into very much detail on individual medical histories, etc. That's not really an appropriate forum. So do save those for your healthcare provider. If you're a Boots Online Doctor customer and you have questions, you can message the clinical team. But we're here to provide that simple and straightforward evidence-based advice and really cater to what you want to know to support you as best we can on this journey.
Indeed. Great. Oh, we're starting off with a poll. Fantastic. So if everyone wants to just have a quick look at the poll and work your way through, it's just to give a bit of an example, or sorry, to get an understanding of the microbiome and how you feel it might sort of impact in your health.
Absolutely. And sort of where you are with what you know about the microbiome. It's quite trendy at the moment, isn't it, Sarah, to talk about the microbiome with all sorts of products available on the market. But it's actually got quite a significant role when it comes to overall health, metabolic health in particular. Um, and yeah, Sarah, you're going to talk about this one.
I am, yes. I'll kick off. We finished that poll. So as we've mentioned, today we're going to be talking to you about the microbiome and how it impacts on body weight. So I think we just want you to know through all these webinars that weight management is more than just being about calories. It's about metabolism, it's about inflammation, it's about how well your body processes nutrients, as well as all the psychosocial things that we talk about as well. And there's a lot of emerging research to show that the gut microbiome, as well as the oral microbiome, both play a really important role in digestion in the body, in metabolism, and in how our bodies store fat. So just to go into a little bit more detail, our gut microbiome contains trillions of, oh, we've just got the poor results, sorry, contains trillions of bacteria, which all impact on our body weight and our health. And we're starting to identify and to understand better the distinct families that we've got within the microbiome. and how the balance of these communities influence not only our weight regulation, but our overall health and well-being. So I think it's important to say that everybody's microbiome is very unique to them, and it's very unique to how each of us utilizes energy from our diets, as well as how we store fat in our bodies. And these microbiome or this microbiome, these bacteria, have a real impact on how we store, how we extract energy from food, and therefore affect our body weight. There's two main types of microbiota, so bacterial families, that we wanted to focus on today, because they account for about 90% of the gut bacteria. They're the ones, oh, they're called bacterio. Sorry, I always get the names wrong. Sam's much better at these. Firmicutes and Bacterotides. And these different bacteria extract calories differently from our food. So if we've got higher levels of the Firmicutes, that's actually linked to an increase in obesity, because those bacteria are really efficient at absorbing calories from our food and therefore can lead to subsequent weight gain. Whereas if you have more in the way of the Bacterotides, these are linked with a lower incidence of obesity. So it's helpful to know, because we do have an ability through our food, through our diet, to affect and to change our microbiome. So if we're consistently thinking about whole foods, high fiber foods, consistently thinking about sort of the positive impact that we can make to our diets, then we can influence the microbiome and again, how we extract energy from our food.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. So, um, one of the things Sarah mentioned there was the oral microbiome. So that's the bacteria that lives in the mouth that is there to keep our mouth nice and healthy. So what is interesting, there's emerging research in this area that we give a lot of attention to the gut microbiome. It's kind of a trendy topic at the moment. But the emerging research reveals a strong connection between the oral microbiome and weight management. So the mouth is home to 26% of the body's bacteria, while 29% are in the gut. And studies show that there are differences in the bacteria that make up the oral microbiome between people of a normal weight and those who are overweight. So there are also noted patterns in the gut microbiome linked to obesity, as well as those found in the mouth. Okay, so lower diversity in the oral bacteria is linked to a higher risk of weight gain, and some studies even suggest that specific oral bacteria may contribute to obesity over time. So one of the mechanisms proposed is that your oral bacteria can affect your taste preferences. And we know that a higher BMI is correlated with a reduced taste sensitivity. So what is suggested is that this would reduce the pleasure experience from food, and therefore that person would need to seek out additional foods to boost the pleasurable experience of eating. So it's kind of really interesting how the bacteria in your mouth can affect you in that way. So there's a possible link between the oral in your mouth microbiome and your food preferences. The composition of that bacteria could influence your taste perception and contribute even to a lot of us have this reluctance to try new foods, or being a little bit nervous of trying different things, especially when it comes to vegetables that we're not familiar with or we had a bad experience with in childhood, perhaps. And also, that taste perception can lead us to have a preference for the more high calorie, engineered to be highly palatable processed foods, okay, further reinforcing those unhealthy eating patterns. So it's quite an exciting new area of research, highlighting the importance of oral health, not just for our teeth, but also for our overall weight and metabolism. And there's just a slide here, so don't be intimidated by this slide, and please do ask questions if anything that we talk about isn't clear to you today. The question and answer box is open, so do pop your questions in there. So the microbiome has several mechanisms by which it affects weight management. And as Sarah mentioned before, energy extraction from food. Um, eh, the bacteria family Firmicutes actually extracts more energy from food than other families, and that can increase your risk of obesity. Your gut and oral microbiome will impact your fat storage regulation. So a balanced gut microbiome can help prevent excessive fat storage, whilst if there was an imbalance, it might contribute to increased fat accumulation. Appetite and cravings are also impacted by the composition of our microbiome. So we can end up having cravings for certain foods and an increased appetite. Inflammation and insulin resistance. It's really interesting. Being overweight has been linked to having a reduced variety or diversity of gut microbiota. So uh, we have less diversity in the gut, and this has been found to have a link with low-grade inflammation and insulin resistance. Okay. Um, we know that the gut microbiome, the composition is affected by our diet, and therefore it can be changed. We can make a difference to our gut microbiome to support our effective weight loss and our overall metabolic health moving forwards. Oh gosh, me again. All right, so what can we do? So this is heavily nutrition focused. So handily, this basically ties in with all the things that we have been telling you all about our approaches to food. So if Rabdino is with us today, actually supporting us as our tech support and moderator, would you be able to share the core meal plan, please, Rabdino, and perhaps the Mediterranean approach to food also? So, what we really talk about when we're talking about eating to support healthy weight loss is protein with every meal, fiber with every meal, and healthy fats. Okay. So, when these are fancy words, but they essentially tie in exceptionally well with the advice that we already know supports healthy weight loss. So, prebiotics, essentially fiber rich foods, specifically the sort of family of vegetables, you'd call them garlic, onions, leeks, really good for, it's a really good substrate or really good food source for healthy gut bacteria. Bananas also make it onto that list, even though they're nothing like garlic or onions. Probiotics. So we want probiotic food. So that's food which has live bacteria in it. So we know that a good live yogurt can be really great for our gut bacteria. Kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, miso. Miso is great as long as you're not heating it up, because of course, if you put something in a stir fry and add some miso, it tastes great, but you will have killed off the bacteria in that miso. Polyphenol-rich foods. Polyphenols are simply a phytonutrient, so a nutrient found in certain natural foods. So berries, green tea, dark chocolate, we know that are all great sources of polyphenols, and fiber and resistant starch. So we love fiber. Fiber is it's a good food to help you feel fuller for longer. It's also great for your digestive system. It's fantastic for your gut microbiome. So beans, oats, lentils, cold rice or cold potatoes actually have more of that resistant starch that your microbiome really likes to feast on. So those are all really good things to include in your diet, and they will all be included on the core meal plan. You can incorporate them into your daily routine. Um, do I need to mention anything else here? So I've said it a few times, I'll say it again. A more diverse microbiome is linked to better digestion, reduced inflammation, and improved weight regulation. Okay. We also talked about healthy fats there. So um, healthy fats are anti-inflammatory compounds. So we're talking about omega-3 rich foods like salmon, like walnuts, like flax seeds. These help maintain a balanced gut environment as well, preventing metabolic disturbances, let's say. So we really want to create this really happy gut, this happy microbiome that supports that better digestion, metabolism, weight loss, and overall health.
Brilliant, thanks, Sam. I think it just highlights the importance as well of like eating the colours of the rainbow in terms of getting diversity of food. I think sometimes we can get a bit overwhelmed with, oh, which food was it that was the prebiotic, which is the probiotic. But essentially, like you mentioned, they're really high fibre foods, but essentially eating the colours of the rainbow is a really good way of thinking about it and trying to get as much diversity in as possible. Anyway, let's move on. So we wanted to touch on the fact that meal timings are really important for the microbiome as well. As with every other pattern in the body, the microbiome has got its own circadian rhythm, so its own essentially like sleep wake cycle. So it's really important that we think about that and we try and keep our eating patterns in line, in a rhythm with that. So if we are eating within our body's own circadian rhythm, it's going to really help maintain sort of a good microbiome balance. And if we're consuming foods outside of these normal eating phases, so if we're eating late at night, if we're eating throughout the night, if we're eating early morning, this can potentially lead to a disruption and imbalance in the gut microbiome. This is something we call dysbiosis. It can be very tricky if you're a shift worker to try and keep that sort of really good circadian cycle for the gut microbiome, but it is important to think about. Um, and if we're not eating within our body's sort of normal rhythm, so trying to eat, between say 8 and 8, then it can actually lead to a reduce in the diversity of the microbiome and put us at risk of inflammation and metabolic disorders, as Sam was saying. So I've just kind of briefly mentioned the potential health consequences of not eating sort of within a normal pattern, that it can be linked to increase in metabolic and cardiovascular problems, as well as importantly, weight gain. So I think it's really important just to think about, um, what time we're getting up, what time we're starting by having breakfast, what time's our lunch coming in, what time's our dinner. Are we trying to keep that consistent through the course of a week, throughout the course of a month? Because that would be really helpful. There's also been some emerging evidence to show that time restricted eating, so with eating within a certain window, is really, really good for our gut microbiome, and it can positively impact the type of gut bacteria that we have. It's thought that it also improves the diversity of the bacteria in our gut microbiome, and that beneficial bacteria that it will help to nurture helps to reduce inflammation throughout the body and can reduce the risk of those metabolic problems.
Absolutely. So I think anyone who's been to one of our webinars before will be aware of this list of foods to aim to reduce or avoid altogether. And we'll just look at it from the viewpoint of the microbiome today. So supporting our gut microbiome and our oral microbiome can really play a role in weight loss and weight gain. And it's been found that reducing the foods that we've mentioned here on the slide, so that's highly processed foods and meats, high sugar foods, artificial sweeteners, low fiber foods, and foods containing emulsifiers, provides the opportunity to create that healthy microbiome. It offers, so these foods are known to be inflammatory, okay? And we know that gut-related inflammation has a big impact on our metabolic health in the long run, okay? So if you recognize that, okay, some of these foods might be a bit of an indulgence, it's something to really look at and really focus on, I think, for your overall health journey. It doesn't all have to happen overnight, but we really focus on that real food message. We in our core meal plan, in all the food approaches information that we share with you, we're really focusing on real food. So food that doesn't come in a plastic packet, come in plastic packaging, that when you read on the back of it, it only has a few ingredients because it's not full of artificial preservatives, emulsifiers, all sorts of different colorings and sweeteners, etc., etc. Because we know that those ingredients are there to make the product last longer, to be very, very palatable in some cases, and very, very moreish, and it can really derail all our good intentions when we end up being quite reliant on those foods that are not helping. And now we know that they also play a role inflammation in the body. Okay. So do ask any questions if any of this is not making sense. But I think it's really good to see that the advice that we give on the webinars here are really borne out by the emerging evidence around the microbiome and how we support our whole body health and also our weight loss efforts through that more whole foods approach to eating.
Lovely, thank you. I think it's also important to mention sort of lifestyle factors as well as nutrition factors. So there are lifestyle things to take into account when we're thinking about the health of our gut and our bodies generally. But I think we'd like to focus really on sleep and stress in relation to the microbiome. So stress is really important because if we have high levels of stress, it can actually increase the permeability, so the leakiness of the gut. And many of you might have heard of a term referred to as leaky gut. I think it's bandied around quite often. But essentially, when we're stressed, we release hormones, stress hormones like cortisol, which can actually weaken the connections, so weaken the kind of protein connections in the gut wall, making it more permeable to sort of toxins that are taken into our body in an undigested food that can then pass into our bloodstream. Stress also disrupts the gut microbiome in that it can reduce the diversity and the abundance of that really good bacteria that we're looking to increase, and it can encourage the growth of the less good, the more harmful species of bacteria. Stress also has an effect on changing the speed at which nutrients pass through the gut, so the gut transit time. And it can also affect mucus production, which is really, really important of the gut, because the mucus in the gut is one of the things that helps with immunity. So that is really, really important. We've also got lots of chemicals in the gut. They're called neurotransmitters. And if we're not eating in a healthful way, then we can stimulate the sort of overproduction of these neurotransmitters, which can also impact on the immune defenses of the body, because the gut plays a really important role in our immunity. So essentially, if we've got a disrupted gut microbiome, then it can increase that leakiness of the gut. It can affect our immune response to things, and it can cause overall inflammation in the body. And if we're constantly stressed, it kind of perpetuates this negative cycle. So maintaining sort of really low levels of stress is very, very important for our microbiome, for our gut, and for our overall health. Sleep is the other really important factor. So we know from research that even getting a few nights of very disrupted sleep, it can actually lead to gut dysbiosis. So that's the less healthy balance with like the not so good bacteria in the gut. So when we're thinking about having a healthy gut, a healthy microbiome, we need to think about ways that we manage our stress and that we optimize a good night's sleep. So we've talked a lot in the other webinars about stress management and things that we can do to sort of improve this. And we've just put a couple of examples on the slide. So mindfulness, meditation, they're really, really good ways of reducing cortisol in the body, of reducing other stress hormones in the body. And exercise is another fantastic way of doing that, and particularly good for weight sort of regulation, weight management. And then we also talk a lot about sleep hygiene, and we've got the sleep webinar that we do. So please do have a look at that if you feel that's relevant for you, because a good night's sleep is also, like I said, super valuable for the health of our gut microbiome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. I'm sorry that I just lost the slide presentation. Apologies for that. Here we are again. But yes, lifestyle factors super important when it comes to gut health. That calming of the gut, that calming of the whole nervous system. We notice how everything is interconnected when we think about actually how we're managing our stress, how we're managing our resilience, our relaxation. Actually plays a really big role on how our body functions. So the key take homes for today is to start where you are. Start small. It's really a this is emerging evidence. We want to keep it really simple. It's a bit of extra information for you. It ties in really well with the advice we've already shared with you that we've got freely available on the website, through these webinars, on the podcasts, on the 10-week weight loss course also. So this week we really want to bring in the suggestion of bringing in more fiber into your diet so that your healthy gut bacteria, healthy oral microbiome bacteria have some good uh, nutrients to keep them healthy. Um, and see if you haven't already, and I will actually go through the poll results because we didn't go through those. If you don't have any fermented food or drinks in your diet, then maybe start trying small amounts. And I would really suggest trying small amounts to start with because sometimes you can't, if your body's not used to fermented foods, your tummy can feel a bit bloated. So I'd go with small amounts. Um, and also really think about what you do to manage um, stressful times in your life. How do you build your resilience? How do you relax? And we're not counting sleep as relaxation, although sleep is very important. Relaxation is a different thing. Relaxation is actually consciously taking time out to do something that you enjoy, something that lets your mind unwind, that really gives you that space so that your brain can have a bit of a rest because our brilliant minds are very prone to uh, overthinking, overanalyzing, being very stimulated by all the things around us. And sometimes, well, regularly, we do need to give our minds a bit of a break and something that you enjoy. That's the key, I think, to make sure that you're doing something to relax that you enjoy. So let me just go over the poll results. So right at the beginning, we asked you about what you know about the microbiome, really. And it's good to see that most of us do know that the microbiome plays a role in our health, 64%. And for some of you, for a third of us, people didn't know. So that's great. I'm glad that we could share some information that might be helpful for you going forwards. Um, so so to repopulate your gut microbiome, Sarah, any ideas how long it might take?
I think it can actually start to happen very, very quickly. It's like within a few days, actually. So when you start to make, positive changes, when you think about the Mediterranean style of eating, that's going to have a really good effect really quickly.
Yeah, and absolutely, and the key is consistency, right? It's sort of reducing the those foods that can negatively impact your microbiome and bringing in the good ones and kind of looking at it as a whole. But yeah, absolutely, it can happen quite quickly. Um, we have lots of veggie eaters, which is great. And some of you that don't really like vegetables, that's kind of interesting. So maybe you have that lack of diversity in the oral microbiome and it's affecting your taste perception. A possibility. Um, a possibility. And I would really be, if you're on a weight loss journey and you don't like vegetables, I would really be looking at really simple ways to just start doing something slowly, introducing different foods slowly. And if you can, even speak to a nutritionist about that and sort of bringing in different foods because they are so vital for your health going forwards and they will really help you on a weight loss journey moving forwards. Fermented foods might be a little bit more, maybe not everybody has tried those. Um, but actually, some of us, quite a lot of us, 37% regularly have fermented foods, some of us occasionally. But yeah, it's something that maybe see how your gut reacts. I think if some of us have a bit of a sensitive tongue or we're completely not used to fermented foods, then it can be a little bit upsetting to our gut to try this new taste. And sometimes they do have quite a particular taste, and it can be a little bit tricky. But I think that it's great that there's quite a lot of people here who have already tried. So yeah, some things might be easier than others, I think, to try. Like for example, a Greek yogurt, a live yogurt is probably more palatable than sauerkraut. So, go with the easier things first, I'd say.
Indeed.
So
Are we ready to move on to questions, or did you want to mention anything else from the poll, Sam?
I think we can go on to the next questions here. Our next webinar is coming up, so do sign up. The next few weeks, we are going all the way through August now as well. I think we're just missing 1 week after the bank holiday at the end of August. But do register on Eventbrite. I think Rabdino will share the link on in the chat box for you all. And yes, I think we have time now to go on to the Q&A. And also, we'd love to get your feedback. So if you also please, thank you, Tina's already done it, sharing the feedback form. We're really looking for feedback on these webinars, and please do give us any suggestions of topics you'd like us to cover or things you'd like us to go into more detail on. We are very open to your suggestions.
Great, thanks, Sam. So yeah, let's start working through the questions. So I think the first one we've probably already answered. What can help with our gut health and fat loss around our tummy? So when we were talking about the foods to support your microbiome for weight loss, those are the foods that we would suggest for weight loss. So those sort of prebiotic foods, the foods that are really high in fiber, so the vegetables, whole grains, legumes, those sort of things. Other things that can increase the gut diversity, that's the probiotics, the foods that Sam said, some people actually haven't tried before, maybe like the kefirs, the sauerkraut, the kimchi. And then again, just really thinking about having sort of a balanced diet of like whole foods. So when we say whole foods, we mean foods that are as close to nature as they can be, the ones that haven't been highly processed. So vegetables, berries, fruits, all of those sort of things. Those are going to be really, really fantastic for your gut microbiome and increasing that diversity.
Absolutely.
I think we've got one. In the poll, you mentioned vegetables. At this time of year, standard veg is lower, but salad foods are much higher. Even the salad foods, I mean, obviously tomatoes are a fruit, but all of those salad foods are also vegetables, so equally valid in their conversation of vegetables.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Oh, there's a really good question about hormonal fluctuations influencing the gut microbiome. I imagine that there is a real link there. I can't say that I can tell you about it off the top of my head. It's probably a good one for Ruth, actually. Sarah, do you have any information on that?
Um, well, certainly the hormonal fluctuations will influence the gut microbiome. Um, this is a reference towards polycystic ovaries. I'm not sure exactly what the link there is, but certainly, yes, that is a condition that's linked with sort of insulin resistance and more difficulty in weight regulation and weight management. So I would have thought there is a strong link probably with the gut microbiome, but yeah, that would be a question for our nutritionist to pick up on more
Yes.
specifically.
And come along next time because what I'll do is I will write these questions down and we're very happy to go away and do a bit of research and come back with more of an answer for you. But I imagine there is an influence of backwards and forwards for the gut microbiome and PCOS. So thank you for asking that question. Um, yeah, that's great. Um, Someone's asking about gut microbiome testing. There are various companies that offer gut microbiome testing. Um, there's no one that I would particularly advise in this forum. I'm not sure if yeah. I'm not sure if we do anything at Boots for that yet or in the main Boots store, but you can. But the thing is, you can get your microbiome tested, but you need help interpreting the result. That's what I would say. So lots of places will do testing, but you need the interpretation. So if you do go for it, make sure someone can give you a comprehensive evaluation of the result.
Indeed, yeah. Someone's asking about sort of not wanting to address medical issues specifically, but they have diverticular disease and suffer with very high iron overload, so have to limit vitamin C intake and iron. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And hopefully you will have had specific advice if you do have very high iron issues with foods that you should sort of focus on more than others, but definitely worth interesting to mention.
Yeah. Yeah. So how come cold potatoes and rice have more resistant starch? It's to do with the when the foods cool down, the molecular structure changes slightly and the resistant starch quantity changes. It's strange, really, but That's just how it works. What's an emulsifier? It's an additive that's put into food to make things, I believe, more kind of creamy. So it's basically an additive added to processed foods. And often on the back of a packet, it will say emulsifiers. So, it's a
Would probably advise you to avoid those kind of
yeah.
foods,
So if
because they are,
possible,
like you said,
avoid
a bit more
as you
highly
can.
processed.
Yeah. What
Um,
exactly do you mean by inflammation? So inflammation means that something is, so inflammation occurs in the body. For example, um, if you had a scratch on the back of your hand or something, and you can see the inflammation there, so you can see that the area of the skin gets red, it's a bit sore. You've got all the inflammatory, you've got all the sort of components of your immune system rushing to that area to try and fix whatever breach has happened and try and mend the damage, right? That's what happens when something is inflamed. So when we're talking about inflammation, we're talking about a background. So more and more, the kind of lifestyle medicine perspective is really heavily sort of signs up to this concept that inflammation, there's a background level of inflammation in the body. So that is something that we can see in the gut when the gut has a background level of inflammation. As Sarah was talking about, uh, the cells of the gut wall um, can become less cohesive. So we want the gut, of course, to be a semi-permeable membrane. So we want things that we want to keep to be able to flow through the gut membrane, and things we want to lose for waste products to go into the gut to be got rid of. Okay. But when we have a background level of inflammation, that could be because our microbiome is not very healthy. There are various other things that can influence whether our gut is more leaky than it ought to be. Then it ends up having these bigger gaps between the cells, and therefore we can think of it in this way. Um, you have all the body can sense that and is trying to fix the deficit, and you get this level of inflammation. I hope that makes sense. I hope that does make sense. So basically the inflammation is your body trying to heal something, but it's creating a bit of that inflammation. If you imagine that little scratch on the back of your hand, that sort of redness and a little bit of heat, that kind of thing, is inflammation. And that's what the body's reaction when something isn't quite right, where there's a little bit of a deficit. And imagine if your microbiome is not particularly healthy for whatever reason, you didn't know all this stuff, and you're just paying attention to it now. It might be that your microbiome needs a bit of help and there's a bit of inflammation there, and that inflammation can present as all sorts of funny symptoms like IBS type symptoms. It can be stomach cramps, it can be bloating, it can be discomfort in the tummy. um, this is an enormous topic, and it's a really interesting one. We have loads of questions, but I hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, lovely. Just another question. How do I determine if my microbiome is optimized for weight loss, and are microbiome tests accurate and actionable? I mean, you can do the testing, as Sam mentioned. You can get the various different microbiome tests, the oral ones, the gut ones, but it's the interpretation of them that's very important. And I would say, just in general, for optimizing the microbiome, think about the unprocessed foods, think about the whole foods, and that's the best way you're going to be able to optimize that microbiome to be healthy and for weight loss.
Yeah, the testing is like an added extra. I would really be just focusing on real food, on the prebiotics, probiotics, on those polyphenol rich foods, managing stress and relaxation. Those things will improve your gut microbiome, whether you have a test or not.
And the test will fluctuate also depending on what you've eaten within the course of the, days, weeks, months before. So that's also important to think about. Sorry, another question. With the real foods, I do really prefer to eat whole foods, but there are a couple of ultra processed products that I sometimes need to eat. So gluten bread, as I'm wheat intolerant, and cornflakes. Um, Fine. I think, that's absolutely reasonable. We can't be perfect all the time, and that's not what we're asking you to do. We're just asking, where possible, if you do have the choice, think about choosing those whole foods, those real foods, rather than the ultra processed foods. we all slip up occasionally. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to have a devastating effect on your microbiome if you have, an ultra processed food here and there. So don't give yourself a hard time. It's just about trying to consistently make good decisions and to choose those foods that are going to be more nourishing for your body, that are going to really help that microbiome flourish.
Absolutely. And you've mentioned that you're wheat intolerant there. Looking at alternatives, I know bread is very convenient, but quinoa, rice, potatoes, corn-based wraps or that sort of thing might be another way to look at things. Um, but yeah, none of us is perfect all the time, and we realize that we all have time constraints as well. It can be difficult to cook from scratch all the time, but when you are in the supermarket and you're purchasing sort of more convenience type foods, just read the back because there will be better versions out there. They're not all the same. There'll be some that have. I would really look at the number of ingredients in something and just look. Do you recognize what they are? What those things are listed on the back of the packet. Do you know what they are? And sometimes if you don't know what they are, they're likely to be kind of artificial ingredients, and we want to avoid those as much as possible. But sometimes we totally understand that it's not always possible. But we're doing what we can.
Lovely. Um, if I only use Splenda in hot teas, would that have an adverse effect on losing weight? How about using stevia? If both of these options are to be avoided, what's a healthy option to slightly sweeten hot teas that's not honey? I think Splenda is one of those artificial products that causes certainly spikes in your blood sugar level, because it almost acts as a sugar even though it's not. So those tend to be less good for you, and we tend to advise while steering well clear of those, essentially, because we have a lot of artificial sweeteners in, fizzy drinks and stuff as well, and they actually have a very similar effect to natural sugars in the body anyway. Stevia, I think is that made
Bit
from,
more natural. And
yeah.
the ideal thing would be to try and wean yourself off having to sweeten hot drinks. That might take time, and I totally get if you're horrified by me saying that. But yeah, honey is one option. Date syrup is one option. Agave syrup is another option if you can manage those a bit more natural, because we did mention that artificial sweeteners do disrupt the microbiome. So if you can avoid those, it's better. You did say no honey. What could we do? So date syrup, agave, um, and I would see if you can challenge yourself. Can you wean yourself off? Have less and less each day, and just see if you enjoy it in the same way. Because we do want you to enjoy it. It's not about depriving yourself and feeling awful. And sometimes a hot cup of tea is really comforting, but it can be done. So it might be a little bit of a challenge to yourself.
Sam, someone's asking for a repeat of the information about the oral microbiome and the best way to maintain a good, healthy oral microbiome.
So again, it's about diversity in your diet. So it would be the same advice really as with the sorry, I'm just going to move back to my slides. So it would be the same advice really for the gut, because it's obviously the oral microbiome is part of if you think of the gut as a whole tract, right, from the mouth to all the way down, it's going to be influenced by what you eat. So obviously good oral hygiene is great for your teeth as well, but you're also wanting to bring in that diversity and reduce the sort of amount of highly processed food, ultra processed food, the emulsifiers, the sweeteners. You want to be really looking at those prebiotic foods, the garlic, the onions, the leeks, and bananas. Probiotic foods, so like Greek yogurt, kefir, kimchi, miso, polyphenol-rich foods, so berries, green tea, dark chocolate. Fiber and resistant starch containing foods. So we talked about beans. Someone I saw asked what kind of beans, really any kind of beans. I would be a little bit cautious with baked
The
beans.
more the better.
Um, Baked beans, which have a lot of sugar, so obviously they are processed, but they're just sort of white beans or cannellini beans, aren't they? Baked beans. So you could still use those in a casserole or a stew or even a curry. They add just more of that fiber to your meals. So all different kinds of beans, and it doesn't matter if they come out of a tin. They don't have to be fresh, although there's lots of fresh beans around at the moment, especially in the summer months. There's an abundance of vegetables out there.
Definitely. Um, and then a question about, is juicing vegetables still considered having vegetables in your diet? Um, I mean, if juicing is the only way that you're going to consume vegetables, then go for it. But really, you do lose a lot of that really important fiber when you sort of break down the vegetables in the form of juicing, and your body takes in the nutrients and the sugars a lot more easily. So, as a more healthful way of having vegetables, I'd recommend not juicing, just having them in their whole form. But if you are not a vegetable fan and that's the only way you can consume them, then, so be it.
Yes, I would say if you can go more for a smoothie rather than a juice, because a juice takes out all the fiber, um, it would be better. But as Sarah said, if it's the only way that you'll have veggies, then start there. Start there, and maybe you can progress as you get used to the taste of those vegetables. And yes, let us know how you get on with that, because I think it's actually probably quite a good idea if you're not a vegetable person to start with juicing it. And if you enjoy that, slowly progress towards smoothies. Because it's when you obviously you want to take the fiber. The fiber is great for your gut, so it's a shame to throw all the fiber away.
Yeah. Somebody else has got a number of intolerances, dairy, eggs, and wheat. What's the easiest way to manage it? It's quite tricky to give specific nutrition advice, but I would just say, we've given the core meal plan, the Mediterranean style of eating. There's going to be a number or many, many foods in there that will still be suitable for you. So I would take a look at that. And then, you can always, if you feel that you're not getting the diversity that you need, consult a nutritionist and they'll be able to go through more specifically with you foods that are suitable for you and, those to avoid. I'd probably say that's the best way to go about managing things.
Yeah. Um, Someone asking about taking antibiotics. What's the best thing to do? Yep. So sometimes we need to take an antibiotic because we have an infection, and that's really important that we do and we complete the course. So you can take probiotics. I would take high dose probiotics. So you could ask the pharmacist in store to recommend a high dose probiotic whilst you're taking the antibiotic course. You want to leave a good couple of hours between taking your antibiotic and taking a probiotic, because obviously the antibiotic will probably kill off half of what is in the antibiotic if you take them at the same time. So the pharmacist is a really good person to ask about that. I would take the probiotic during your course of antibiotics and afterwards for at least a good couple of weeks. But make sure you're taking a high dose strain, probiotic strain, to support your gut. Yes, gut supplements, live bacteria.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It depends on the type, the dosing, and I guess the form that you're taking them, because things can get broken down sort of in the mouth, so you're not necessarily going to reach the areas of the gut that you
Yeah.
need. Supplements are not my forte here. I'm not sure if you know much
Yeah, I mean, we don't
about
really advise supplements per se. I would go food first, honestly. I would really go for the probiotic foods. If you were taking antibiotics, that's kind of the only place I would really talk about. Actually, if you're taking antibiotics or if you're on a weight loss injection, we also recommend taking a multivitamin supplement, because there are deficiencies. I'm just thinking of supplements that we recommend. There are deficiencies that are known in folks who are overweight, that the multivitamin can help. Probiotic wise, in general, unless you know that your microbiome is not in good shape, I wouldn't be just randomly recommending everyone takes probiotic supplements. I would really focus on the foods. I think that's a much um, more sustainable way to do it as well. So, for example, a nice live Greek yogurt, I would say full fat, it's high protein, it's got some live bacteria. It's a really good kind of superfood to get you started for the day. If you had that with some berries, some nuts in the morning, you're really setting up your gut for a really good healthy day. If you brought that into your routine, it's a really great way to start the day. Um,
I think there's quite a few questions about sort of supplements and probiotics, prebiotics, symbiotics. But again, I think, you've highlighted there that a food first approach is generally what we would recommend. I know there are a lot of products out there. Someone's mentioned Simprove here. Um, and some people do find them to be sort of very beneficial. Simprove particularly, I'm not sure what the research on that is, but I know that's a very popular product to take.
Yeah. So I would look at whatever product you're picking up. Are all Greek yogurts live is the question. Have a look at the product that you're picking up. I think most of them are. I think Greek yogurt is just the style of how it's made. So I believe they are all live, but just look at the packaging. Nuts, what about salted nuts? We don't advise salted nuts, sorry. But roasted is fine. So roasted, you get a bit more flavour, but preferably not salted nuts because obviously salt has an impact on your blood pressure and other metabolic risk factors.
Slightly different question. Can you get rid of diverticular altogether? Is this something that can be identified with colonoscopy? How else would you know you have diverticulitis? So can you get rid of them altogether? Well, a diverticular is an outpouching in the gut wall. And if you if it becomes inflamed and irritated, then you have diverticulitis, and that can be very, very uncomfortable. And certainly having a whole foods type of diet as opposed to having a lot of processed foods can actually help manage symptoms of diverticular disease. So it can reduce your chances of getting diverticulitis. As far as I'm aware, once you have diverticular, they don't disappear, but they can remain dormant. So you can get no symptoms from them if your condition is well managed. Um, I'm not aware. Oh, I think there are actually tests that you can do that send dye through the bowel so you can see the outpouchings, but I would have thought that a colonoscopy is the usual way of diagnosing diverticular. And often it's diagnosed based on the symptoms you have, so sort of abdominal pain. When you go and see your GP, they'll do a full history and examination, and they often will just make that diagnosis without doing colonoscopies or further investigations.
Yeah. We've got I'm diabetic, gluten intolerant, and post gallbladder removal. So trying to find a balance while also trying to lose weight. Any suggestions? So have a look at the core meal plan. It would be suitable for you. Obviously you pick the foods that don't contain gluten, but that's fine. You have lots of options. And the core meal plan is kind of an amalgamation of the Mediterranean style of eating plus a low carbohydrate approach, a low GI approach, which will be really good for your blood sugars as well. So this is when we're talking about low GI, we're talking about low glycemic index, keeping your blood sugar stable over the day. So that would be a really good approach for you. Um,
A
uh,
similar question to the vegetable question. If you break down fruit like plums in a compote, no sugar, are you losing fiber? Yes, you will be. Anytime that you process a food in any way and that you're sort of refining it to I guess, a more simple form, you are losing some of that fiber. So we would advise you to, if you can have it in its whole form, to do that.
yeah, but it's all right in sort of small amounts, but it's yeah, that's the question. Unfortunately, yes, it can break down the fiber, especially if you're sort of taking off the skins and things. So on a plum, probably most of the fiber is going to be in the skin. Um,
Yeah, indeed.
so questions about yogurts. Generally, a Greek yogurt is what we recommend, and we'd probably go for the full fat version only because if you notice when you go for a low fat option, the fat has been removed, but it's been replaced by emulsifiers, by other ingredients to try and make it taste the same as the full fat version. So that's what I would go for. I probably wouldn't go for the added fruit. You could add your own fruit, but probably the fruit that is added in the factory will probably have a syrup and more sugar added, etc. So you could add your own berries, your own nuts, seeds. It can be really delicious, granola or whatever you like, really, just to make that. It could be a really lovely breakfast or a snack or something. So thank you for that question.
Uh, so is taking Acidophilus good to boost gut bacteria? I think that's one of the lactobacilli. So the answer to that would be yes. Are you able to elaborate on that anymore, Sam? I think that's
I think it's, I
so.
mean, we talk about diversity in the gut. Yeah. So we're not really focusing on one strain. I would speak to the pharmacist in store about if you it's we're not recommending everyone goes out and takes probiotics. It's if you know that there is a problem, then you could take probiotics. If you know that you have taken lots of antibiotics in the past or you're on a course, then you might want to think about probiotics. I would really be thinking about your diet and about probiotic foods because those are they're higher in concentration actually of good bacteria, and also they're easier for you to for your system to uh, absorb in a way. Because as Sarah was alluding to earlier, there is some sort of question as to depending on which supplement you buy, how much of that live bacteria actually makes it to your gut and how much of it is sort of destroyed by your stomach acid. So we have to think about that too. Um,
So are allergies affected by the gut microbiome? And can you lower your histamine levels naturally? Um, so yeah, I would have thought the gut microbiome does influence allergies. Certainly, again, if you've got an imbalance there, so that dysbiosis, then yes, it's going to make sort of allergies. Well, it's certainly not going to help allergies. Um, how do you lower histamine levels naturally? Um, I mean, avoiding triggers is certainly going to lower your histamine levels. I'm not sure I can recommend any sort of nutritional advice, particularly for lowering histamine. And
it would just be reducing your inflammation level. I don't know if it would, and
yeah,
I expect that would reduce your histamine levels overall. But if you're having allergies, then you probably have a, if you have a lot of allergies, then you probably are seeing your GP or specialist about that. And I would consult them really because it might, depending on where your, how bad your allergies are, it might be that you need additional support. So I wouldn't say abandon everything and focus on your gut microbiome. Although getting a healthy microbiome will really support your overall health and no doubt will influence your allergies too.
definitely. And then a question towards protein shakes. Are they okay for the gut microbiome? I'm struggling with appetite and getting enough protein in. Again, we would always suggest that you try and have sort of protein in a more natural form. Whether that's lean meats, fish, nuts, seeds, tofus. Those are probably the best ways to get protein into your diet. But if you're struggling, I mean, again, it's a processed way of consuming protein. So we'd probably suggest if you can do it in another way, that would be ideal. But obviously, you have to sort of look at what you are able to
But
do with.
also looking at the product, there's so many products out there, right? Of like protein powders, etc. I would go for one that is as has as few as ingredients as possible, to really so you recognize the ingredients on the packet if you really have to go down that route. Um, without sort of artificial flavors and all of that sort of thing. Just try and keep it as basic as possible. But yeah, we do stress the importance of protein, and I know that it's actually more than you expect that you of protein that is recommended. So good for you for looking at it and sort of saying, how can I get more protein into my day?
I heard local honey can help with allergic reactions. That is very true, and it does apparently have to be local honey. So thank you for mentioning that. That's good for everyone to know about.
Yep. Are we through all the questions? I'll just quickly skim through.
We are now, yeah. Lots of questions. Thank you. It's always more interesting for us when you ask lots of interesting questions.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm just skimming through the chat to see if there's any questions that we've missed. Um, I think we've answered everything. Thank you so much, everybody. I think it's about time that we let you get back to your day. And we look forward to seeing you next week. I hope you found that interesting. It's quite as I say, an emerging field, but a fascinating one. And it's kind of one that really encompasses that holistic approach to health and to weight loss. It's really um, your microbiome is a really precious, your microbiome, which encompasses oral microbiome and gut microbiome, are really vital resources on your journey.
Indeed. Thanks, thanks for all the webinar help as well.
Yeah.
It's great.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Abdino. That's been
Thank
great.
you.
We will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.